Here is a terrifying fact about fairies that will blow your mind. The fairy world is a dangerous place, and if you ever find yourself in it, there's a good chance that you won't be coming back. Fairies are known to abduct humans who enter their world. But why would they do this? Well, it's not personal. The fairies don't know you from Adam. It's all because of a desperate attempt to save their world. The human world is dying, and without us, nature is slowly being reclaimed by animals and plants. But things aren't much better in fairyland either. In fact, it might even be worse. The same natural forces that are reshaping our world are also taking their toll on the fairies. And with each passing year, the land is becoming less hospitable for them. So when fairies see a human wandering into their territory, they see an opportunity to save themselves. But how can a tiny fairy capture such a huge human? Well, they're much stronger than they look. You may have heard the saying, "Don't judge a book by its cover." Well, this is one time when that saying really applies. A fairy's power shouldn't be underestimated just because of their small stature. They are incredibly strong and can overpower a human with ease. If a fairy wants to capture a human, it will approach them and start whispering in their ear. At first, the human will hear only pleasant things, but as the fairy gets closer, its voice will become more insistent. Soon, the human will be under the spell of the fairy and be able to resist its commands. Once it has control over its victim, the fairy will lead the human deep into the forest where no one can hear their screams. Then it will use its magic to bind the human to a tree or rock. Once the human is trapped, the fairy will begin the process of extracting their life essence. This is what the fairy needs to survive. And once it has drained the human of this essence, it will be left with enough power to live for another year. Sometimes fairies will work together to capture a human. In this case, they will take turns whispering sweet nothings into the victim's ear until he passes out from exhaustion. Then they will carry him off to their secret lair and do with him as they please. The human will be completely helpless in these situations and will most likely be killed. However, there have been rare cases of humans surviving fairy abductions. Those who have survived have often told stories of their experiences, but no one knows if they are telling the truth or not. After all, how could anyone prove that fairies exist? In some stories, the humans are rescued by other magical creatures such as dragons or unicorns. In others, they escape on their own after defeating the fairies in battle. But regardless of how they escape, all the survivors agree on one thing. Fairyland is a dangerous place, and it should be avoided at all costs. It's important to remember that fairies are not like the magical creatures we see in Disney movies. They are wild, unpredictable, and sometimes very cruel. But why do fairies need human life essence to survive? The answer lies in the nature of both humans and fairies. Humans are complex creatures with a vast amount of life experience. We have emotions, memories, and dreams that make us who we are. All of these things combined create a powerful force that fairies need to survive in their world. Fairies, on the other hand, are simple creatures with very little life experience. They don't have the same emotions, memories, and dreams that humans do. As a result, they are much weaker and more vulnerable. To make up for this, they have developed the ability to feed on the life essence of other creatures, including humans. When a fairy feeds on a human, it is essentially taking in all of the life experience that has made that human who they are. This includes their emotions, memories, and dreams. The fairy then uses this life experience to sustain itself and keep going. But what does this mean for the human who is being drained of their life essence? Well, it depends on the strength of the fairy. A weak fairy will only be able to drain a small amount of life essence from a human. In this case, the human will most likely not even notice anything happening to them. However, a powerful fairy will be able to drain much more life essence from a human. This can cause the human to become very weak and even go into a coma. If the fairy is strong enough, it will eventually kill the human, and then it will be able to use their life essence to sustain itself for many years. So how can someone defend themselves against a fairy? The answer may surprise you. Fairies are repelled by certain types of energy, namely positive energy. This means that if you are a kind, happy person, fairies will most likely stay away from you. In addition, fairies are also repelled by iron. This is why it is a good idea to carry a horseshoe or other iron object with you when you travel through fairy territory. Finally, fairies are also repelled by salt. This is why it is a common practice to put salt around the windows and doors of your home. It is believed that this will prevent fairies from entering your house and causing trouble. And speaking of houses, there's one more thing you should know about fairies and homes. They hate it when humans move into their territory. When a human builds a house in fairyland, it causes the land to become corrupted, and the fairies are forced to flee. This is why it is so important to avoid building houses in areas that are known to be fairy territory. If you do, you may just end up causing the destruction of an entire ecosystem. Now let's talk about something that you probably didn't know existed: Pixie Hollow. Pixie Hollow is a magical place where fairies live. It is located in the woods behind my house. My brother and I used to love playing there when we were kids. We would pretend that we were fairies flying around the trees and flowers. One day we found a small hole in the trunk of a large oak tree. We crawled through the hole and found ourselves in a secret fairy garden. There were beautiful flowers everywhere, and the air was filled with the sound of singing. We saw tiny houses made out of leaves and twigs, and knew that we had found the real Pixie Hollow. Unfortunately, Pixie Hollow is in danger. The trees are being cut down and the garden is being destroyed. The fairies are losing their homes and their way of life. I don't know what happened to my brother, or if he still believes in fairies, but I never forgot the magic of Pixie Hollow. I hope that someday it can be saved. I've always loved fairies and magic, but I never really thought about what would happen if a fairy captured me. Now that I'm older, I'm much more aware of the dangers of the fairy world. I know that if I were ever to stumble into Pixie Hollow today, I would be in grave danger. Fairies are powerful creatures, and they are not afraid to use their powers. If they felt that I was a threat to them or their way of life, they would not hesitate to attack me. Maybe a human, but I'm still a powerful creature. And if I wanted to, I could destroy Pixie Hollow in a matter of seconds. The fairies know this, and they fear me for it. That's why they try to keep me away from their homes and gardens. They don't want me to see what they're up to. They think that I'll try to destroy them if I know too much. If a fairy ever tries to whisper in your ear, you must resist its magic. You must cover your ears and scream as loud as you can. If you don't, the fairy will win, and you'll be trapped in Pixie Hollow forever. Thank you for watching. See you next time.